This is a TalkStation original podcast.
This article comes from The Stream, and it's called A Call to Christian Leaders. We Are Not Celebrities. The article is written by Shane Idleman. He writes, without question, one of the hardest jobs is being a Christian leader, especially a pastor. Close friends leave you, others betray you, social media slams you, the world hates you, and demonic forces rally against you and your marriage. This is why thousands exit the ministry each year. We are also often stretched financially, relationally, emotionally, and physically, all while living in a fishbowl for the world to see. To deal with the stress of ministry, we sometimes believe that popularity or celebrityism will fix our problems. Oh, life would be so much easier if I could just be a mega ministry pastor and have 100,000 followers and a popular podcast. Trust me, this is not the case. Busyness can be a cruel master. And I'll point out at this point that Shane Idleman is in a position where he could be viewed as a celebrity pastor because he's the founder and lead pastor of Westside Christian Fellowship in Southern California. But he goes on to say, to be sure, there's nothing wrong with godly ambition. We must be disciplined and respond to God's call, but He must get all the credit and glory. If I could go back to focusing solely on a small local church, I might jump at the opportunity. The slower pace of life was refreshing. Remaining true to God's call, not mine, is the only thing that keeps me going. Whether it's itinerant speakers requiring Hollywood status, worship teams demanding the rock star treatment, or pastors chasing likes and retweets, celebrityism has infiltrated the churches on a scale never seen before. This must break the heart of God because, as 1 Corinthians says, no flesh should glory in His presence. There's nothing wrong with God growing a ministry as long as we remember who grew it. It's not about your position, but your posture, the posture of your heart. We, that being pastors, are not celebrities. We are sent to help the broken, the hurting, and the lost. We are not building our ministry. Let God handle that. We are called to build other believers. He says of himself, God took this small-town boy with dyslexia, who was often labeled stupid, and called him to the ministry. God opened enormous doors to air my sermons all across America, write books, and speak nationally. For this reason, I must be on guard when the devil whispers in my ear, look at everything you've built. To be sure, there's nothing wrong with godly ambition. We must be disciplined and respond to God's call, but He must get all the credit and all the glory. Jim, do you ever see yourself as a celebrity pastor?
No.
Do your people in your church ever see you as a celebrity pastor?
No.
Never.
I don't think so. I don't know.
All right, well, let me put it this way. If people are coming to St. Paul because they think that Jim Daud is the greatest preacher in the world, could they be viewing you as a little bit of a celebrity?
Well, I think there's always that danger. And I try to encourage, like when I teach Bible class or things like that, is that the church should never be about the pastor. Because pastors come and go. Unlike some of our other churches, for us in the Lutheran church, we choose when we get to take a call or when we move to another church. So there's some longevity in our positions versus some other churches. For us to be removed from office is not just because you didn't like, what the sermon was or something like that. But I'm also cognizant that if I'm not there on a Sunday, there are people who don't show up.
Right. And I'm aware of that too. So for that reason, if I ever go on a vacation, I tend not to tell people I'm not going to be there.
Correct. And I did that for a long while. because it's kind of rude to the pastor who's filling in, or if it's a non-communion Sunday and we have elders who fill in my stead, it's rude to them as well, because there's a lot of time that it takes for them to prepare, for me to write the sermon for the elders and things like that. And so I think what we have to remember, though, and we see the danger. Shiny things are always distracting, not just for kids, not just for puppies, but they're also distracting for preachers. And look at how many times big name preachers have fallen because of the shiny things, because of the glitz, the glamour. It has taken the focus from their eyes upon the cross to their eyes into the mirror of their glory. And I think sometimes we forget that, yes, while we are still sinners, we are fallible. And I think sometimes there's that struggle, maybe, that people do tend to put pastors and other religious leaders on pedestals. And when someone makes a mistake or loses their temper or says a wrong word, then all of a sudden they're crushed because, well, you put that person so high. But we are sinners, just like everyone else. And while, yes, we are called to have lives that are at a different, a standard, if you what Scripture holds, but we do sin. We get tired. Sometimes our tongue gets the best of us before the editing desk can catch up. But what about for you? Do your people see you as a celebrity?
I hope not. But as we said earlier, I don't tell people when I'm not going to be there, because I don't want them to make a decision, say, well, if Pastor Karl's not going to be there, I'm not going to go this week. And I hope people don't think that way. Sometimes the danger with celebrityism is when we start to see ourselves that way. Like if I'm working on a message for a Sunday, and as I'm writing it, I'm thinking, wow, this one's really good. I'm really going to bring the word this week. And then I go in and I preach that sermon, and I'm up there thinking, this is the greatest sermon that I've ever preached, that anybody has ever heard. You know, I could rank up there with the Apostle Paul today, except I don't use as many words as he does. And maybe mine's a little easier to understand. And that's the Sunday that nobody says anything except good afternoon as they're leaving the church. But then there's another Sunday I'll go in and I will preach a sermon that when I'm done, I feel like it was such a dog that there's fleas up on the pulpit, right? And then someone will come up to me after the service, say, that was the greatest message I have ever heard. And I think, you've either heard some really lousy pastors, or this is your first Sunday ever in a church. But both of those instances are reminders that it's not about me.
Yeah.
And when the word is proclaimed, it's not because I'm a good pastor or because I'm a good public speaker. No, the word is proclaimed because I got out of the way and let God do something. That's difficult to remember that when you are the face of the church.
Yeah.
You know, you're up there in the chancel area, basically on a stage all by yourself, commanding that room for however long you preach. And it's hard to keep humility in check, or to keep ego in check when that happens. And that comes back to what you were saying earlier about we're sinners.
Yeah.
When we preach a great sermon and people say, oh, that was wonderful, or we lead a worship service, people say, oh, I felt the Spirit here today, we can think, oh, I'm really good at what I do. No, we can't think like that.
Well, and the greatest compliment for me as a preacher that I can ever get is not good sermon, Pastor, is I needed to hear that today. That is, for me, the best compliment I could ever receive. And really for me as a pastor in a liturgical church, when I put on my alb and I put on my stole and I put on the cincture, it is covering myself as a human, and it is putting on the vestments and the clothing of Christ, because I'm speaking in the stead and by the command of Jesus at that moment. So there's no room for me. anymore because there's only room for Jesus. It's not about how much I paid for my suit or shoes or what. It's all about Jesus.
I'm Ryan Kelly.
I'm Lynn Schultz.
And we're the hosts of the Senior Moment podcast.
Each week we bring you conversations with experts right here in our community about the common and uncommon challenges facing our aging population and caregivers.
We discuss the challenges of caring for a loved one with dementia, as well as the importance of health planning, family history, and much more.
Join us every week for Senior Moment, streaming now on Spotify, YouTube, and at CarolinaCoastonline.com.